this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is my current keyboard, the iQunix A80 Explorer. I actually purchased this keyboard about a year ago, but I've only just found time to do anything with it, and I really like the look of it and a number of other things that make it interesting. Theoretically wireless, but more importantly, it comes with hot swappable switches and a selection on offer with Gateron browns, reds, and cherry options too. This is the Gateron brown sound. To improve the sound and show you what's possible, I've swapped out the switches with these linear Novelkeys Creams, which I've then gone about lubing, which, let me tell you, took ages, and then the result is this. A much more satisfying sound and feel when both gaming and video editing and doing other things. There are some things to bear in mind along the way, so I'll unbox the keyboard by going back in time and showing you what I've done with it and the things to look out for. There are a number of keys that are stabilized, for example, in a variety of ways, and also pre-lubed as well, so there is some lubrication. You don't need to do everything yourself. And obviously you don't even need to do that because you can choose from the standard switches, and they do sound pretty nice as standard. Now, as I said, this keyboard is both wireless and wired, and it's available in backlit with RGB LEDs and non-backlit. I actually bought the RGB version, and I'm going to tell you that it's rubbish. I wouldn't buy it for the RGB lighting because it's terrible. And there are a few other things about the keyboard that are similar. The wireless connectivity I found to be a bit flaky, for example, but it doesn't really matter, and I'll show you why in a minute. But in the box you get a number of things: USB-C cable, the wireless dongle, a little cleaning brush, a keycap puller and key switch puller, and then obviously the keyboard, along with some keycaps if you want to use it on a Mac. Now you can see that you can adjust the feet on the underside, and you will notice that there is a slight slant to it in an ergonomic way. This keyboard is designed with an 80% layout, which gives you 83 keys, and that's reasonably pleasing because obviously you've got the directional arrows in the bottom right, which is really important to me, and the delete keys in a great place in the top right. Although I will say having page up next to backspace has been a pain. There are no volume wheels or anything fancy like that, sadly. But you do have them buried in the function row, so you do have volume up and down and mute in F10, F11 and F12, although there's no markings on the keys to indicate that. You get a reasonably nice looking USB-C cable that plugs in on the left hand side, and a claim of up to 200 days of battery life with Bluetooth. I am not worried about the wireless though, because I'm using this fancy custom cable from KBD Fans, which I also bought ages ago and have been looking for something to use it with properly. It's a chunky beast and it really looks nice with this keyboard, I think, although this is a personal preference, obviously. Not necessary. You could use the standard included cable, but I wanted to jazz up my desk a little bit since I was going to be using this board and spending a good amount of time with it. So as standard out the box, it's pretty nice looking. Obviously the different coloured keycaps make it look really nice. I kind of like the funky design of it. I do like the contrasting colours, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get it. The slope design, the compact nature of it, obviously hot swappable key switches is appealing, and the fact that it's a PBT setup as well, so the keycaps are a nice quality, and it's kind of nice on the ears and on the fingers too. So again, that's Gateron browns as standard, but you can choose from other ones. I'll link in the description so you can find out more about that. But what I found is if you pull off most of the keycaps, you'll find quite a few of them are stabilized like this. So you can see some extra stabilizers in there, the metal stabilization, and then the plastic clips in there on things like the left shift button, the space bar, and enter key. And if you are going to take it apart as I did, you do have to be careful not to accidentally lose those, because they do come off when you're taking it apart in this process. So some clumsy mistakes are made in this video, and I want to highlight them because I know other people will point them out anyway, and that included losing one of these and misplacing one while going about putting it back together, and I also put the spacebar on the wrong way around, as you'll see in a second, but that ends up actually being more comfortable. One of the other things I spied is that you'll notice that there's some padding underneath the spacebar to help with the dampening of the sound. So it's actually a nicer sounding spacebar than on most keyboards. There's a little bit of foam under there. Now that is a nice little additional thing that you don't often see. And obviously there's a lot of people out there modding keyboards in various ways, but this one comes with some nice additions, so you don't really need to worry too much out of the box unless you're a full-on custom keyboard designer, and you probably turn your nose up at this, but for the average user it's great. Now I'm swapping it out with these linear switches. As I said, they are Novelkeys Creams. I'll leave links to in the description. They're kind of quieter and more satisfying to use, and I'm also going to be lubing them all. But another important point here is that you'll notice that these switches are 5-pin, and the board does take 5-pin switches, so that's a bonus. But I'm using Krytox 205G here for the lubing process, and I'll link down in the description to a detailed video that shows you how to do the lubing if you're interested in doing this. Essentially just adding lubrication to the inside of the switch, the leaves, the spring and the other parts, and it just smooths out the process. But obviously 83 keys taken apart with this little tool, spread out, individually lubed. It took absolutely ages. My back was agony. I was tired after doing this as well, because I was doing it on my hands and knees so that you could get some footage of it. So you end up with some nice switches and some good action, but you do need some patience in order to pull this off, and a little bit of effort. And you don't need to do this, obviously. It's going that extra mile to improve your keyboard, but it is nice that you do have the option to do this sort of thing if you want to, or just to try out some other switches on the board, because there's a lot of options out there, especially when it will take 5-pin switches, so you've got plenty of other ones that you can choose from. But the Novelkeys Creams are known for being really good switches, although obviously they have less of the focus on the RGB lighting. I will say, even as standard with the standard switches that it's set up with, you really don't see much of the claim of the RGB, so the backlighting is just kind of poor on this keyboard. So I would go into it knowing that if you are thinking about purchasing it, I wouldn't bother with the RGB version, but that doesn't really matter because it still ends up being a great looking keyboard, and it's been really comfortable to type on with this upgrade. So just putting these switches together, lubing them up, has been worth it, because now it's a much nicer feel. You've already heard what that sounds like. It's probably not doing it justice in real life, although going from browns to creams is not quite as bad as like going from blue switches, for example, but it has still been a satisfying action on there. And obviously putting it back together took some time, and did have some problems with some of the pins bending, as is tradition, but you can see adjusting those stabilizers out of the way as well, having to deal with putting those back together, and you'll see where they're positioned there, and then putting the keycaps back on and just moving that around. I ended up putting the spacebar on the wrong way around, and I lost one of the stabilizer pins for that. So not the metal bit, but the little plastic bit on the underside. But it still ends up sounding really good, I think, and feeling good, and looking the business as well. So check it out now and listen to a nice sound test on that, and then let me know what you think in the comments down below. You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos, you might well find them interesting or useful, and most importantly, have a great life.